know if you knew this or not, but it was the ancient Greeks that really came up with the concept of having these pots or plants grown in these containers and having them overflowing like this. And it's just absolutely gorgeous, which kind of parlayed into the United States when it came to the fact that gardening is the #1 hobby in America. And being that it's the #1 hobby in America, something very interesting happens and people can get hurt, especially those of us that are over 65 years old. Now, I'm not quite there yet, but I've got parents and friends that are. And Joni, you really got to help me out with something over here, because when people get to the age of 65, there's something that's called Medicare, and I have no idea what that is.
Well, Nick, Medicare is a U.S. social health insurance coverage that's provided to people predominantly over the age of 65, but also to others who are under the age of 65 and who are disabled. Now, most of us qualify for Medicare because through the course of our work, we are paying a tax, a Medicare tax, to get coverage that will provide hospital coverage when we turn 65, and that's known as Medicare Part A. In addition to that, people can elect to have Medicare Part B, which has ancillary services and physician services. And when they're in Medicare Parts A and B, that coverage goes ahead and covers 80% of the costs of any care that they need from providers who are Medicare providers, and they're responsible for paying the balance, that 20% of their costs.
Okay, I didn't catch any of that.
and it can be confusing.
And that's the whole thing I get, because my mother gets this Medicare. I know she has that, and there's things and parts to it that I don't understand, the A's and the B's, and it just seems so complicated. And being such, how do we make it easy?
Well, part of what we do at our company at easyMedicare.com is to help consumers navigate through the process of deciding what coverage is best for them. Is it traditional Medicare, Parts A and B? Is it a Medicare supplement policy? Or in many instances, we're seeing more and more consumers opting into what's known as Medicare Part C, and that's the sort of process we work them through. We talk to them about their health needs, their physician relationships, what sort of medications they may take, and navigate through the process of looking at the myriad of coverage that's out there to help them make a decision that's best for them long term.
Okay, so let's pretend that I am 65 and I am just the epitome of health that I am right now. At that point, do I have to opt for Medicare at all? And if so, what do I choose, A, B, or C?
Well, you get Medicare Part A immediately.
Just because I was working?
Because you were working and paid that tax. Medicare Part B needs to be elected, and generally speaking, that's going to take place at the time you're turning age 65 and you have that option.
Okay, then what does that mean, elected?
You have to actually opt in through Medicare and make that decision. And then the costs for that coverage are deducted from your Social Security check every month.
Oh, so I'm not actually coughing up any hardcore cash to where I'm writing a check each week. It's kind of being taken care of.
It's being taken care of through your Social Security.
I had no idea.
Yes.
That is so cool.
And it varies based upon your annual income, but generally speaking, that's going to cost about $115 per month.
Okay, so I have this Medicare in place, and then this is the Part B kicks in. Correct. Right? That's the elected part. That's the part that I decide what I want to do. And there's different levels to choose within that?
No, Part B is actually going to be the same for everybody. But in addition to that, it doesn't cover prescription drugs. So people need to look at their Medicare Part D, which is the prescription drug, and we're going through the alphabet here. And Part D will cover their prescription drugs as well. And the sort of coverage that we're seeing most people moving towards now, as I mentioned earlier, is the Medicare Advantage plans or Medicare Part C. And that will cover hospitals, doctors, it will cover their prescription drugs. And in addition to that, it has health and wellness benefits, which are very attractive to people. So it's very much focused on getting them well and staying on top of things so they're not in a reactionary mode to things that may come up.
Okay, so am I correct in thinking that when you said the word carriers, that we're looking at more than one entity that we would opt into?
Sure. There are literally hundreds of insurance companies across the country that contract with Medicare to provide this sort of coverage for consumers. That coverage varies by geography. The sort of coverage and the details of that coverage vary by carrier, and it's important for consumers to make sure that they understand what their needs are. The physicians may vary among the carriers as well, the hospital networks. The prescription drug costs may vary from carrier to carrier, and that's part of what we do to help consumers do.
Okay, so here I am. I've got my mother. I like my mother, but you know what? Maybe I want to send her like to Maine, so I have some place to visit. Okay, and with that being said, from where I'm at right now, does this information chase her over there to Maine, or do we have to redo it?
It depends if it's going to be seasonal or if it's going to be a permanent move. If in fact it's a permanent move, then she would need to look for a carrier that's offering coverage in that area. If it's a seasonal move, there are plans that offer what's referred to as out-of-network benefits as they're moving across the country. Part of what we deal with across the entire country are, snowbirds that move from one place north to south over the course of the seasons, and look to provide them with coverage that has those benefits.
Okay, so I know that we can go to easyMedicare.com, but somebody like my mother, she doesn't have a computer. All right, what do we do?
You call us up. And
oh, okay.
We also work very closely with consumers over the phone. This isn't a short time process. We can spend an hour on the phone with a consumer getting information about their health history, their physician relationships, what their medication requirements are, whether or not they travel seasonally. We're asking all sorts of questions to hone in on the plans that are best for them long term.
So it's really a good idea to have those medications at hand, know who your doctors are, have that information. Okay, so let's do this. Let's just say now, again, I'm going to pick on my mom because, why she
is.
She has her wits about her, so she can very easily pick up the phone, talk to somebody. But not everybody is that. It has that with them. And if you have an uncle, an aunt, or somebody like that, can I, on their behalf, call and help straighten all this out too?
Yes, if they're on the phone and tell us that they're okay with you discussing that.
Okay, that's what I was kind of figuring. They're in the same room, talking, life is good like that, so I can understand.
We'll work with people, a son, a daughter, whatever the case may be. We'll work with a designated healthcare surrogate to work through those processes if people don't have their wits about them, or if it's just too overwhelming a topic for them.
Okay, so plan an hour or so. Minimum, have all the information at hand, who your doctors are, what your health is. You could do it yourself. You could prescriptions, do it yourself. You could have somebody help you. If you're going to be in there, make sure there's a phone line that's going on, that you can talk to the person that's over 665 or over and all that. And then you've got the advisors that are able there to help them out.
Right, and then we'll also need their red, white, and blue Medicare card so that we can, in fact, validate their eligibility.
Oh, okay, okay. And probably have your social security number handy and all that kind of stuff.
There's actually Medicare has a different number for them.
Now, one of the things that I like doing when I'm sitting in front of the computer and I'm doing all this work is I got to have my Java with me. You like coffee?
I love coffee.
You like coffee, huh?
I don't leave the house without getting at least 4 shots of espresso.
Oh, you got to get pumped up, huh? Well, one of the things that I like with my coffee is that I'm actually kind of I'm a slave to the sweet stuff, man. I got to make my coffee taste like it doesn't taste like coffee. Okay, and here I understand I'm not necessarily doing the right thing, am I? And you're going to pull my hair, and I got a lot of hair to pull.
No, well, in fact, I want to use your prop here.
Oh, you did?
Yes, toxic. just talk.
No way.
Look at this long list of sugars, the
That's what-
second one.
Well, that's when I buy it, I don't have any glasses on. I mean, that's-
Sucralose,
Okay.
artificial sweetener, very toxic. And this fancy word, carrageenan. It's a preservative, but it's also been related to cancer, and it also causes digestive inflammation.
Wow. Now, is that the kind of stuff we're going to have when we call you guys? We're going to have our
You won't need that.
You won't need
So stay away from that.
Okay, so we're going to do something over here that's really pretty cool. What is it?
Yes, it is almond milk. You can
Almond
use
milk.
it as creamer, and it only has 2 ingredients.
Almond milk.
Yeah, almonds and
Okay,
water.
okay. So here I'm seeing an almond tree, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to. Right, is that what we're going to do?
If you want to try that, I don't think it'll work very well, though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So what we need to do is get some organic almonds,
Nice. All right.
water, salt, blender, and some mason jars.
Okay, so how do we start the process?
Okay, so what you want to do is soak the almonds overnight
Okay.
in some water and salt. So what I like to do is a ratio.
Oh, they're wet. They're wet.
Those
You
are the
soaked them.
soaked ones. Yes,
Yeah.
those are the pre-soaked ones. So about 2
Oh,
cups.
it's so much easier to eat too.
They're a little softer.
Yeah, nice.
A little softer. So
Okay.
about 2 cups.
All right.
Plop. This is just a ratio that I came up with. There are other recipes and ratios online.
Okay.
All right, so we've got that soaking, and then add a little bit of salt, just like a pinch. So
Okay. Were you using any kind of special salt there? Is that sea salt?
I'm using kosher
Kosher
salt,
salt,
but
okay.
also sea salt is fine.
Okay.
So you'd mix that up, let it soak overnight for at least 12 hours.
Okay.
Perfect.
Nice, nice.
So that's going to release phytic acid.
You just made that weird up.
I did. How did you know? No, what actually that is, it's an enzyme inhibitor. And so we want to get rid of that. So it's going to leach out overnight. So what we're going to do after overnight soak, we're going to take this to the sink and drain it.
Okay.
Rinse them.
All right.
Rinse them really well.
All right. Let's get that. We did. That's
yeah,
what this
and
is.
so there we go. So
Okay.
this has been soaked and rinsed already.
It doesn't taste like salty water.
No,
Okay, good.
didn't have enough time. So we're gonna take that after the rinse,
Okay.
put it in our food processor.
Nice.
Easy, easy.
Okay.
And then normally I blend this for about 4 minutes, but for the sake of TV magic, there's our
Nice.
4 minutes.
Nice. But it's gonna be much more mealy, much broken down more fast.
Yeah, and this is our pre-prepared product that would have come out of here already blended for 4 minutes.
Oh, okay.
So this is it. The first time I did this, it was a disaster. I was using cheesecloth, a grease filter. It was a disaster of a
Okay.
mess. So I found a nut bag.
A nut bag. Okay.
Yeah, also called a sprouting bag. And this is what you really do need.
And it's just a real fine mesh bag.
Yeah, nylon, yeah. So if you could help me, one of you could, okay, pour it in there for me. I'm just gonna hold this open. That's real important. Yeah, just dump it all in. So you've gotta get out the pulp.
Oh, okay. So that's the pulp of it all.
Therefore,
All right. So you're just gonna squeeze that.
yeah,
So we're gonna pretend your hands are
squeeze.
clean when you're doing that kind of stuff, right?
They are.
All right.
So squeeze. So then you wanna store it. So you can help me with this. And
All right, what are we
this
doing?
might spill a little bit,
Yeah,
but
that's
you get
all
the
right.
idea. And
Oh, nice.
here you have it.
Oh, you see, now we're milking it. Look at that, look at that. See, look at that. We could pretend that's a cow right there. It's so cool.
Actually, I grew up in Tennessee, so I know all about that.
Nice.
So here is your almond milk. So
Okay.
basically, it's just a simple process. Some people like to add vanilla, cinnamon, and I know you love monk fruit as your sweetener.
Yeah, I do I love my monk fruit.
Instead
Comes
of
from the monk tree.
the sucralose, instead of the artificial sweeteners
Okay.
that cause cancer and inflammation and digestive issues also, and all the bad
So what's
stuff.
that taste like?
Delicious.
No. You've actually had it before?
Yeah.
Absolutely. My
No
wife
way.
makes almond
wife
milk at
does
home all the
that.
time.
Really?
Yes.
Intentionally?
Yes.
Wow.
So I
okay.
think it would be, I prefer it with the vanilla.
Okay, now if we drink this stuff, we're not gonna swell up or anything like that.
No, it's
Not like
just
that,
so
is it?
healthy. It has monounsaturated fats that lower your LDL.
Cheers, cheers,
Cheers, cheers.
Okay.
LDLs are bad cholesterol, and HDL is our good cholesterol, which has the monounsaturated fats. So it's super healthy and nutritious.
Okay, there's one problem here.
What's that?
I don't take the
coffee.
I don't taste the what did you call it?
Carrageenan.
Carrageenan.
So that's
yeah,
what
there's
you're.
no coffee.
That's what you're looking for, huh?
It's actually kind of sweet in itself. There's a little bit of a sweetness in it.
Absolutely. Yeah, but wait until you put a little vanilla or cinnamon.
Good stuff.
Do you?
Yeah, I do.
I hope so.
But now that I'm all hyped up on this coffee, I got some gardening to do. You guys want to join me?
Let's do it.
Okay, one of the things that's really interesting about gardening, and you know, everything that you guys are advocating is all about health.
Sure.
That's what I'm really digging on this. It's all about health. You go to easyMedicare.com for that information. And one of the things that I've noticed is that or that we want to do is to make sure that we take all the precautions that are necessary. For instance, make sure you're wearing gloves, put the eye goggles on, wear a big old floppy hat, put the lotions on. 75,000 people a year get hurt gardening. Most of them are over 65 years old.
I believe it.
25,000 of those people will get hurt by gardening tools. So we really have to make sure that we are up on top and we understand what's going on with our tools. Now, what's really interesting about this is that, you know, there was a crooked man that walked a crooked mile. This right here is an ergonomic rake.
Love it.
I have never seen one of these in the marketplace before, but the concept is a really good one, where you would take and you would hold this like this, and then we'll get your toes over here, and you know, and then you're doing your raking in this fashion, and there's less strain on your joints. Have you ever seen something like that?
No,
before?
not at all. Never.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because typically we're looking at a rake that looks like this, isn't it? Aren't we?
Much easier to hold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And low back too.
Now,
You're not
here-
at such a pitched angle.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Now, not everybody can find something like this, as I mentioned. They're not just readily seen on the marketplace. However, there are little gizmos that are available to where you can find them, and you just have to look around for them. Go to your local nursery and garden center and find them. Here's something that goes on the end of this like this, to where now
You're retrofitting it.
Yeah, you're retrofitting it. So
That's
you can,
neat.
yeah, you can get into those plants. You can get down low, and you can do whatever you got to do to get that.
I haven't seen that.
Okay, now what's also really pretty cool is this, is that in the world of tools, the whole idea is to keep your arms as straight as possible so your joints don't get all messed up. Watering is so important. So if I was to have you to water, you see how you're nice and straight like this? Okay, now you can just work this with your thumb, and while you're watering, you're not going to be all messed up like this. And here's a good
Nice.
example. Here's a good example. This right here is a typical type of pruner. Well used, by the way, because I have no problem showing you the ones that have a bunch of stuff on there. But if you were to go like this, all right, now if you notice, now your hand is going in this direction. So you have to make sure your branch is up here. Typically it's not. You're always going to you're actually going to go like this. You're going to turn your hand like this. Now see what you've done?
Yeah.
You've curved your hand like this. That we don't want to mess around with stuff like that, because the strain and the pain of the whole thing. So what ends up happening is that we find tools that have certain characteristics to them that will help us in this whole process. So for instance, if you have limited hand strength, one of the best things that you can do, because I could tell that you've got limited hand. Look at those guns on this guy. Okay. One of the things that you could do is you could do this. Now, this right here is what they call a ratchet pruner. And if you look inside right here, you can see these little I don't know, the notches, I guess. And what happens is you hear that ratchet, that sound? Okay, what happens is that when you put a branch in it, don't push it. When you put a branch inside like this, what'll happen is that it'll grab it, and then it will hold it in that notch, and then it'll go again and again and again. This way your thrust isn't just all the way through, okay? So it slowly ratchets through. This happens to be an anvil type. I'm not keen on the anvil type of pruners, but for limited hand strength, it's kind of a fun thing to do. Now this one right here, can you see what's going on with this pruner? What happens when you push it?
Oh.
Oh,
That's
give it to Tony
really
here.
neat.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
really
check Tony
neat.
out. Is this?
Gets easier as you go.
Yeah, this right here rotates. This is kind of a kind of an easy peasy way of doing it. See that? But we still have to remember that if we're going to be using something that's straight like this, you can tell that it's straight, our hand is going to be like this. Don't go like this. Make it up like that. And then if you're on space exploration, then you would get something that's more in line like this, okay? So just kind of something to think about. Hey, let's do some gardening, all right? Because I drank all that coffee, and now I have all my retrofitted tools, but we got to do some gardening over here. This is actually what's really pretty cool. So with this whole gardening aspect, there are what we call superfoods, and being a nutritionist, you know all about the superfood.
I do.
Yeah, so is that almond stuff like a superfood? It's gotta be.
It wouldn't be considered a superfood like kale, but to me it's a superfood because it's so nutritious and it doesn't have all the bad stuff.
Okay, now since your wife is actually making that stuff, is she making you eat this stuff too?
She makes me watch her cook it.
Oh.
and always offers it, and sometimes I'll indulge.
Now your daughters are actually pretty privy to all this kind of stuff too.
They
right?
absolutely are.
Yeah.
My oldest daughter actually works for the Vermont Food Bank, so she works with farmers in the Vermont area to donate their crops to the food bank for sharing with folks that otherwise don't get the nutrition that they need.
Well, one of the really neat things about growing your own vegetables is the fact that if you have a space that is 10 by 10, that'll feed a family of 4, and you should be able to get at least $2,500 worth of vegetable out there. That money can go to the Medicare thing.
Exactly.
You see, that's how you have to look at this. Yeah, I mean, it's one thing when you think that it's America's #1 hobby. It's another thing when you think about it when it's the number 3rd hobby that most people get hurt at in the United States. And it's also another thing to when you can grow it your own, and when you can grow your own and you can do this kind of stuff, it's just uber awesome. So here we have some of our superfoods, and there's just a menagerie with them. Every one of these foods have certain things that are so good for us. There's antioxidants. I mean, look at, the blueberry thing, right? Yeah. I mean, we've all heard about, you like blueberries? I love blueberries. Yeah, I love blueberries. So the whole thing about blueberries, it has the antioxidant thing, which is that cancer fighting stuff. So munching down on those, really good. You know how I love these? I take a little yogurt, I take some granola, and then I blast the rest of the whole thing with this stuff. Oh,
beautiful.
It's a great breakfast, lunch, dinner.
Yeah, better than donuts.
Yeah. Well, let's not get crazy now. Okay, so the thing about this is that all these plants are easy to grow, and they can be grown all over the United States. Like the blueberry actually is a bush. It's a small bush. It gets about 2.5, 3 feet tall. Gets all the blueberries on there. In certain areas, mild areas like where you live, we can actually grow blueberries now because they have plants that are acclimated for our growing area. So that's something you want to consider. They are full sun loving plants. Now, a lot of these plants here, and one of the reasons why we brought them, oddly enough, they can grow in partial sun or /partial shade. So in the wintertime, there are plants that can be grown in full sun. In the summertime, there are plants that can be grown otherwise. Now, here we have beets. Beets are a great superfood. The second that we start seeing them crown, that means we see the top like this, you would take and you would just yank those bad boys out, munch away. Not only can you eat the beet, you can eat the leaves. That's the best part about that. Of course, broccoli and cauliflower, wonderful. You mentioned the kale. You know the way I like eating kale? Get the kale, put it in the oven, a little sea salt on there. Get your kale chips. They are so good.
They are
and
great.
It's not processed.
Right.
That's the best part about it. None of it's processed. Of course, strawberries. Strawberries are more of a late spring, summer type of crop. And then we have different types of greens and lettuces and kohlrabi and bok choy and cabbages. And of course, you could always be munching down on stuff like this. So that's what's really, really cool about that. So you don't need a big area. Here we just have a 4 foot by 8 foot area. Get yourself a rich, well-draining soil. Make sure that you do have the sunlight. Plant the seeds. The most important thing is don't plant too much. You plant too much, gardening becomes a chore. It's not a hobby after that. And if you start with and do raised beds because it's less problems for your back, because I bet you hear that all the time with people calling up and your advisors and stuff. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, it's really important to arm yourself with the knowledge to know that the older that you get, the chances of you getting gardening are pretty strong. I mean, we have a pretty young audience, obviously, but we also know that we're going to have more time on our hands the older that we get. So with that in mind, if you have friends, neighbors, and relatives, please do the healthy thing and get a hold of the folks over at easyMedicare.com. Thank you very much for sharing our almond milk over there. I've never milked an almond before. That was a beautiful thing. And
Yeah, you're
all right,
welcome.
so with that, we got some harvesting to do, all right?
Let's get at it.
Okay,
Hey.
let's do this.